Hello, you are listening to the Divorce University online podcast with your hosts, Thomas and Tammy Ferreira.
Hi, I'm Tammy.
And I'm Thomas.
And today's episode is called Everybody Hates Me.
Everybody hates me. Or nobody likes me. Everybody hates me. I'm going to the garden to eat some worms.
Like that.
Like that.
This is what it can, this is really what it can feel like sometimes when you're in this and just nothing seems to be going your direction. Like, can I even get like one little win? I have people say that to me a lot. Like everything feels like it's going in the other person's favor. And I just want something, just one little thing to be the way I want it to be.
Right. Even your tires are not wearing correctly. I mean, it's just everything's messed up.
Yes.
Uneven tire wear.
I get it.
You ever have that problem?
I get it. It was a bad joke. Move on.
Yeah, okay. So here's the way I look at it. There's an old, everybody knows who Plato is. Plato was a Greek philosopher in about 500, like 400 something BC or whatever. And he had this idea that everybody is essentially living under this state, in the state of illusion, more or less. It's like we think that we live in reality, but really we live in a cave, and our perceptions are not vivid like they think we are. They're really like shadows that are on the edge of the cave that you're sitting in, and that's your perception of reality. I find this when we have arguments sometimes. I'm operating out of this sense of reality, and the person I'm arguing with
Usually me.
Has a totally different perception of reality.
Yes.
And it's very hard to bridge that gap. But I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about. Maybe that'll clarify it.
Yes, because the Plato thing is like the abstract big picture.
Right.
Yeah, we need some realistic application here of the concept.
So about once a month, I get a call from somebody who is determined that everything is against them in their case.
Right.
And my kids hate me, and my ex is, his or her sole objective is to destroy me and to destroy my relationship to the kids. And let's not even talk about the kids. They're being nasty.
Right.
And the judge. Okay.
Judge is biased.
The judge. And, when I talked to my third attorney, they told me they couldn't help me.
Right.
And eventually, you start to figure out that this person is stuck. They're stuck in a box, like an imaginary box.
Mm-hmm.
Like, have you ever heard that parable about the box? So you ask the person, okay, imagine that you're inside a box that has no doors and no windows and no openings, and it's welded shut on every side. Well, how do you get out?
Stop imagining.
And the answer is stop imagining. Another example is the elephant. There's this, I don't know if this is true or not, but I've heard that when an elephant is in a circus, they use a very light rope to tie them that the elephant's strong enough to snap it in a New York second. But the problem with the elephant is that the elephant believes that it's tied up.
Right. And actually how that usually starts is they do it when they're a baby.
Right.
Like they do it when they're a baby and the rope can actually hold them. And so, or they like, I think I've seen it as like a chain with a weighted, with a weight at the end of it or whatever, where the baby elephant is too strong to break out of the chain. And then eventually it gives up. And then even into adulthood, it continues to not fight the chain, even though in adulthood it could easily break free because it's already been conditioned to believe that it can't break free from the chain.
And I would say that to one degree or another, most divorcing people are like that.
Right.
They are chained to some faulty perceptions.
Right.
And if they wanted to, they could break free from the chain,
Right.
but they don't want to break free from the chain, or they don't believe they can break
They
free.
don't believe they can. And at this point, the conditioning is so strong, they don't even know, how
Right.
either. It's kind of a twofold problem, so to speak.
Right. So if everybody and the judge, I would say first off, I'm not, I've been practicing law for 30 some years, and I'm not saying that there's no corruption, but if your belief is that the judge is biased against you because they're on the take or something like that, you're probably wrong. I don't think that our courts, at least in California, rise to that level of corruption. I mean, are there individual judges that are corrupt? Yeah, probably. But that's probably not your family law judge. Because, at least in front of the judges that I practice in front of, most of them are trying to do the right thing by the kids. Most of them are concerned about you having parenting time with your kid.
Right. They want both parents to be involved because Thomas, has gone to a lot of these trainings and a lot of the, I've gone with him on occasion over the years and things, and, trainings that, the same trainings that judges go through, or even that some of the judges teach and whatnot. And one of the things we hear over and over is that they want both parents to be involved, all things being equal.
Right.
That's the best thing for the child. So you have to start to ask yourself, even if you're in a situation where the other person has falsely accused you of something, whatever they have falsely accused you of, how can you take steps to take responsibility?
Right. How can you empower yourself?
Right. And I think most people view it as like how can I defend myself and prove this isn't true? Kind of thing. It's like let's take
Well, you know what? I'll
okay,
tell you what
go
I
ahead,
want to
sorry.
do. I'm sorry to interrupt,
Okay.
but I'm back on the corruption thing.
Okay.
And here's what people that are afraid that their judge is corrupt, they tend to say things like, "Well, you're going to do this no matter what I say." I mean, I've heard this stuff in open court,
Right.
where they're essentially saying, "Your judge, I know you're biased against me, so do whatever you want."
Yeah.
And that's not impressive. That's a clue to the judge that says this parent does not have the interest of the child in mind.
Right. Because this parent is putting the focus on themselves.
Yeah, right. Or this parent thinks that my just and wise rulings in this case are the result of corruption.
Right. Which, by the way, if you're accusing, you're sort of saying to your judge, either I think you're, in a sort of an underhanded way, you're saying either I think you're just wrong, I think you're stupid, or I think you're corrupt, or I think whatever. If that's the message that you're sending, how do you expect the person that's the decision maker in your case to rule in your favor if you're
Right.
sending
That
those kinds of messages? Right.
Right. And yet-
It would be like standing with your, significant other and, yelling, cursing, smacking them, whatever, and then going, wow, I don't know why this person isn't nice to me.
I don't know why why you seem a little angry.
Yeah. Yeah.
I can't figure that out.
But we see this a lot. And I've even had experiences where even just going down to the courthouse to file something and dealing with that clerk that is there to, kind of help you figure out, what to do a little bit. I mean, they can't give legal advice. That's one of the big things that they're, prohibited from doing. So they're very careful, but they can say this is the wrong form. You would need to do that on this form or little things like that. And people come to that window and they're so unbelievably nasty
Right.
to that clerk. And I'm thinking to myself, are you really expecting that if anything is wrong in your paperwork, your documents or whatever, that clerk is going to make any kind of suggestion to you after how nasty you're being to them? It's
Right.
just, you're totally shooting yourself in the foot.
Right. And that is because the shadow you're seeing on the entrance of Plato's cave, or on the wall of the cave, is the clerk has it in for me. The judge has it in for me. The family court services recommending counselor has it in for me. My attorney has it in for me. Everybody's got it in for me. And so
Everybody hates me.
and everybody hates me, which is the title of the episode.
Right.
Okay. And what I'm going to suggest to you is that that's a distortion.
Right.
You know, let's take the judge as one example. That judge has 7,000 cases, so it's really not about you.
Right.
You know, and it may well be that on such and such a day that judge had an argument with their wife or something, you know, because they're human.
Right.
But to have the hypothesis be that this is a person who's biased against me because of my race or because of my gender or just because they don't like me, it's most likely false.
Right. And I find what happens early on, especially in a case a lot of times, is that, you know, like Thomas said, judges are human. Okay. Yeah. Family court services, that's a branch of the army, branch of the arm of
branch
the
of
court.
The army. Oh,
sorry. I am tongue twisted today. An arm of the court in California that assists in determining child custody issues. So you may have something similar if you're in another state that's not necessarily called that. But what happens is, you know, I find that sometimes that counselor or the court or whomever will get a decision wrong, particularly about the children or the custody situation or whatever. Again, they're human. They're infallible. I mean, they're fallible. Excuse me. They can be in error. No. And so a lot of times what happens is they get something wrong in the beginning, and then the person, you know, from that point starts saying, oh, well, you're all just against me. And then it gets worse and worse and worse and worse. Right. And I have a few different cases that are that way because, you know, some of my coaching clients, because that's what happens is you sort of get on this self-fulfilling prophecy where you think everybody's against you. So you behave as if everybody's against you.
And then everybody turns against you.
And then everybody's turning against you because you're being so difficult and defensive. And it just kind of becomes this runaway train where you're continually getting this result that you don't want because people in the beginning made a mistake and you let that shape your whole experience in court. Instead of, you know, trying to take steps to prove that their perception of you is untrue, what happens is you start feeding into this cycle and pattern of behavior that actually reinforces that their first decision was correct.
Right. And, you know, if the court is really totally biased against you, there's nothing you can do. You might as well give up. Because you can't control the court. You can make an argument that's persuasive, but you can't control them. If they have, you know, if your case has gotten a bad reputation with the court, is getting a reputation for high conflict or whatever, you can't change that by something that you do at a 20-minute hearing. It can't be done, or something that you write in a brief. I think this first step is to examine your hypothesis, and let's allow a different hypothesis to enter. Like, just, you know, what if it isn't the judge's bias? What if they're not really biased against you?
Right. Okay. What would it look like?
What would it look like? Okay. And if you come into court with your old hypothesis, it may take a couple court appearances before you turn this around. But if you don't want to operate from that hypothesis, because you can't change that, but you can change your behavior.
Yeah, well, and thereby change it. I mean, you made the comment that you can't come in a hearing and change the court's perception. You can, but not in one fell swoop.
Yeah.
You've got to change your pattern of behavior over the long haul.
Right.
Like I had somebody contact me recently that said, "Hey, can you look at my family court services, my child custody recommending report?" And I said, "Sure." And I looked at it. And, her perception of it was that the counselor was biased in favor of dad. And the child's a teenager. And so they actually interviewed the child as well. And I said, well, I don't really get the sense that the counselor is biased in favor of dad. Like it's that, dad is, saying that he's struggling with conflict with you in certain areas. And part of the problem is the child is having similar struggles in different areas because she's the child, but the child's having struggle in similar areas with interaction with mom.
Yeah.
And so, I said, I understand that he's being difficult and hard to deal with for mom. Like dad's being difficult in a lot of ways. And so, she said, I said, so what we have to do is kind of flip the perception, flip the view of what's going on to where you're not the problem so that they can see what he's doing. I mean, they're both doing things, I guess is what I'm saying, but mom's is more extreme. So that's the one they're paying attention to.
Right.
And she's going, well, why isn't anybody noticing what dad's doing in this particular situation? And I'm saying, because what you're doing is so extreme that they don't even notice what dad's doing. And so what you have to do is stop doing what you're doing so they can see what's really going on.
You have to allow him to be the jerk.
Right. And you're reacting to him so much and being defensive, either way, whichever parent it is or whatever, you have to like sort of step back and let that actually come to light. And her response was, okay, good. How do I do that? And it's like, well, that's not a one-word answer. I don't have a little magic wand or magic button you can push or something I can send you that's just going to flip the court's perspective on this. Right. What this requires is a long-term modification of your behavior, which requires a lot of insight into what you're doing and what your part in it is. And that's really hard when you're in this divorcing situation because, I mean, I've been there. I remember. It's like, it's really hard to look at my part in it.
It's very hard.
Because I felt like his part was so, egregious.
It's hard on your self-esteem to look at your own part.
Right. But and so it's very counterintuitive, right? Because it's a way of emotionally protecting yourself by blaming the other person.
Right.
That's I used to say I have two choices. I can either be angry or I can cry all the time. Like that was sort of my two options. Right. But eventually I had to, if I continually pursued the anger, then I come across as the bitter, resentful one to the court, even though what I'm really doing is trying to emotionally protect myself. Right. And so to sort of lay that defense mechanism down and actually look at my own part in it and go through the grief and the crying and the whatever and be able to actually take ownership of my part and come to terms with it, then it becomes real easy for the court to see those issues in the other parent if the other parent isn't handling their business.
Right. So you let the court see that because you're stepping out of the way so they can see it.
Correct.
Well, I think that's true. And from the standpoint of a family law practitioner who does custody cases, child custody, I think it's important to understand and shape your worldview around what the court is looking for.
Right.
Like, for example, the court wants you to cooperate for the sake of these kids. They want you to cooperate with your nasty, mean, no good
surly ex.
Right.
Well, yeah.
They want you to be a problem solver and cooperate.
Right.
But if you come into a situation where you think the court's biased against you, or you think that all the problems emanate from your ex, or you think that somebody just doesn't like you and is trying to destroy you, you're going to come across in a way that doesn't sound cooperative.
Right.
It's going to undermine you getting what you want, which is more time with your kids.
Right. Right. And I think that's part of what your experience was in family court is, you went in and you were like, well, gee, we just can't, I can't cooperate with her. I can't,
Yeah.
And the court said, well, you're not as child focused as mom is.
Right.
And it's not that
See,
you're
we
not,
have to learn things the hard way.
right. And it's really not that you're not as child focused. And I mean, I know that because I know both of you pretty well at this point after 15
Both
years.
of us being me and
you
my
and your
ex.
ex-wife.
Okay.
Yes. And I would say that you're more child focused of the two of you. But that wasn't the court's perception because you were allowing those emotional issues to override.
Yep, that's true. I felt
you know.
like they were trying to undermine me, and so I
Right.
and so I didn't. And I told them that I couldn't cooperate,
Right.
and that was not what they wanted to hear.
No.
Oddly enough, so that's exactly what I'm trying to get my coaching clients to see is that sometimes your perception that people are attacking you is actually undermining your case.
Right. And even if it's true,
Yeah.
even if it's true, it's just not the way to, because what happens is in you trying to say that they're attacking you, you're attacking them.
Right.
So then you're just in a position where the court's like, I don't know, pox on both your houses because I can't, you're both doing the same thing and everybody's blaming the other person.
Right.
You
I had that case a couple of years ago where the fella just he wanted to find every little detail about the other parent's character that was because he felt like if the court could only see what she's doing,
Right.
if they would only wake up, if there was some way we could show them what she's doing, how she is, she worked at the daycare, so she was undermining him.
Right.
She went up and I'm trying not. The reason I'm
Yeah,
hesitating,
don't
I don't
give
want
too much
I don't want to
detail.
give too much detail because I don't want to
Right.
give away the case. But his focus was on changing her or getting the court to order her to change.
Right.
And what I told him is, well, if you attack her in that way,
Mm-hmm.
then you look like the one that's the problem.
Right.
So my suggestion, stop attacking her and let her do her little whining. Oh, he doesn't do this and he's not on time and he doesn't. And I think it would have won the case.
But he could not do it.
He couldn't do it. And I said, you know what, if you can't do this, then maybe I'm not the attorney for you.
Right.
And he said, me.
Right. I mean,
Yeah.
sometimes your philosophies don't match. But here's
Right.
the thing is that somebody that's willing to, an attorney that's just willing to meet your emotions where they are and say, oh, yeah, what a dirty, rotten scoundrel. We're going to get the other person.
We're going to roll
or-
him over. We're going to.
or her or whatever, like
Mhm.
whichever side it is, that, that makes us, that gives our self-esteem a boost. That makes us feel more self-righteous and
Right.
and all those things. And so that attorney is really just, they're not really doing you a service. You need an attorney that's going to give you a reality check and say, well, the court is going to find that important or the court's not.
Right.
How many times have we seen you were talking about this the other week, that you went into court and there was this attorney who was, a really good attorney
Mhm.
and really aggressive,
Right.
and whatnot. But his client's position was so bad. I think he represented dad in that case. Do you remember what I'm talking
I do
about?
exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
I
Anyway,
think you're right.
I wasn't with you.
And there was
so-
minors counsel and the whole thing.
Yes, there was minors counsel assigned to the child because there had been so much conflict and all this. And you said dad's position was just so weak because minors counsel was against him. the judge wasn't ruling in his favor, and then his attorney is standing there all, stiff-lipped talking about how incredulous it all is. But in reality, that's not helping, because it's not getting dad the result he wants.
Right. And I think the reason they had minors counsel is because he did something, like he took the kid out of the state, or he did something that violated the court order, or something of that nature. And I can't remember what it was.
Right.
But if I was representing him, I'd be tempted to say, well, your best argument is mea culpa.
Yeah.
I did do that, and I realized in retrospect that I shouldn't have done that.
Yeah.
And really, it's in the best interest of the child that they have contact with me. And
right. Yeah, and I find a lot of times that the court is receptive to that. I tell a lot of my moms that I work with that is like, as women, we tend to usually be the more emotional one and kind of be difficult and more, I don't know, I don't like the word hysterical. That's kind of the wrong word, right. but more emotional and things. And so, one of the things that I always say is,
don't get any argument from me.
Well, one of the things I always say is that, like, if that is kind of like how you were reactive in the beginning, because let's face it, a lot of times we're going in and something really emotional has happened, right? We have found out, and this isn't just true of moms, this is true of dads. I just think that most of the time men cope with it in a little bit different way. But, sometimes we have found out the other person's having an affair, or there's been some major issue with one of the kids, or there's been some sort of crisis point a lot of times when we go in at the beginning of our divorce cases. And so, sometimes people don't behave well. I think for women, it's more of the emotional thing. And I think, like men, it's just different type of behavior. But the court, either way, is receptive, I think, when a person can stand up and say, you know what, Your Honor, I did send that nasty email. I was in a very emotional state. I've been in therapy. I've been trying to deal with my emotions around this. And I understand that the other parent is important to be involved in the child's life. And I'm trying to, I'm trying to behave. I'm trying to get control of my emotions and learn how to behave better. And I find courts are really receptive to that, because they don't, sorry, I have hiccups. They don't expect us to be perfect. They just want you to take responsibility when you have behaved poorly, whether that's emotions or even things as detrimental as drinking and drug use and different things. If the court thinks you're taking responsibility for that, getting clean and sober, getting therapy, getting help, whatever form that is for whatever's going on, they tend to cut you some slack.
Yeah, it's a better argument sometimes than just going in with guns blazing on a losing position.
Right.
Just to kind of bring it all together, if everybody hates you, then you need new friends. Right? I mean, you need new friends, and there's places to find them. You can find them at your local church or bridge club, whatever you enjoy doing. You can join Tammy's coaching group or my coaching group if you're the guy, and you can commiserate, and that's really the place where you can be shrill and complain and pound the table and be angry.
Yes.
But the thing is that, generally speaking, the illusion is because we're inside our own bodies,
right?
And all of our perceptions come through senses, so we're limited by our sense perception, and it's just we're behind our own eyeballs looking out, and it looks like everything revolves around us.
Right.
Okay. The illusion of that is so powerful, and the fact is that these judges and these people, and even your ex occasionally, when the case is over, they go and do something else.
Right. Right.
And they're not thinking about you.
No, but usually a lot of times you're still thinking about them.
So this kind of what I call a solipsism, that's the philosophy term for self-centeredness, essentially. And I'm not saying that to disparage people, by the way. I'm not saying, oh, you're just selfish. This is part of the human condition.
Right.
I'm not looking through your eyeballs. You are.
Right.
I'm looking through my eyeballs. I think you hate me.
Right.
But
Yeah.
the truth is that nobody is thinking about you
Right.
except during that 20-minute hearing.
Right.
No, after that, they go on to the next case and nobody's thinking about you.
Right.
So nobody's on the take.
Right.
Nobody's got some bias against you because of the way you do your hair or the way you talk, your Kentucky accent or whatever it is.
Hey, now let's not talk
Yeah,
about
that's
Kentucky
getting a
yet.
little too close to
Yeah.
home.
Thomas is starting to end his sentences with "in there." I
In
told him he's
there.
been living with me too long.
That's right. It's all in there.
It's all in there.
And the correct hypothesis is also the useful hypothesis. The correct hypothesis is that by your own behavior and the way you conduct yourself in the case,
Mhm.
you can turn the case around.
Right. Takes time.
Right. And if you operate from that hypothesis, you have power
Right.
because you can change your behavior.
Right.
You can't change your ex's behavior.
Right.
You can't change the court's behavior.
Right.
But you can change your behavior in a way that pushes the right buttons that get you what you want in the case.
That's exactly right.
So
You are exactly correct, sir.
I love it when you say that.
Good thing it's recorded. All right. So if you are listening to the podcast, don't forget to rate and review us and subscribe so you find out when new episodes come out each week. If you're listening to us on YouTube, YouTube, don't forget.
Yahoo!
Don't forget to hit like and subscribe so you get notified as new videos come out each week. And thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to the Divorce University online podcast with your hosts, Thomas and Tammy Ferreira. For more information, visit www.divorceuniversityonline.com.